I want to welcome you all. I'm Orville Schell, Dean of the Graduate School of Journalism here at Berkeley. And this event is being sponsored by the Berkeley China Initiative, which is an effort by the 70-odd faculty here on this campus, which is an astounding number, who had something to do with China, to get together and to engage this issue in new and constructive ways. I think we all recognize that the relationship between our country and China is probably the most important in the world today. And I think of all the issues that we share in common, both in terms of what we contribute to it and how we might resolve it, there probably is no more important issue than climate change. I think these two critical countries simply have to get together. To date, we've been pretty much hiding behind each other in this issue, and if the world is going to come to terms with the question of climate change, I think we need to have a more cooperative relationship, which is what brings us together here today. I think also universities, think tanks, governmental research institutes, this is the stuff from which the fabric of some sort of collaborative solution will be woven. And that's really what we're about here. We have people from the sciences, from policy, from other kinds of social science research, the media, NGOs. We've got all the links in the chain, and we hope that we can play some small catalytic part in bringing them together into something that is enduring. So what is needed is a fabric of collaboration, and we hope we can have some effect to weave that in the next few days. And finally, I would say, you know, what is needed on this issue is more public education. And even though it is in a fallen state of grace, I don't know any other way to do this besides through education and the media. And that's, of course, where someone such as myself comes into this. We simply must find ways to break the blood-brain barrier between the knowledge, the information that universities have, and the outside world. And we hope we can do something of that here in the next few days. So I hope this will be a very catalyzing few days. I thank all of you who come from Europe, from across the country, and from China for being here, and I hope you have a very interesting time while you're in Berkeley. Tonight, let me just tell you, in this room we will show a special screening of the film of Al Gore's efforts to evangelize around the country for this problem, An Inconvenient Truth. It'll be at 8 o'clock. I think it would be well attended. If those of you want to attend, I would suggest maybe getting here a little early. Now, it really gives me enormous pleasure to introduce the Chancellor, Robert Birgeneau of Berkeley, not only because he is our Chancellor, but he's also a physicist of great distinction. And obviously in this issue which we're here to deliberate on, science plays a huge role. He spent many years at Bell Labs at MIT. Prior to that, he received his PhD at Yale, went on to be Dean of Science at MIT for many years, then became the president of the University of Toronto, and then in 2004 came to Berkeley. And he's been Chancellor since. So would you please join me in welcoming Robert Birgeneau.
It gives me great pleasure to open the China-U.S. Climate Change Forum, and to welcome the many distinguished speakers and guests who have come to UC Berkeley to participate in this conference. Over the next 2 days, you will explore one of the most important societal problems facing our world today, global warming. This topic cannot be addressed without considering the roles of the United States and China, two of the world's largest producers of greenhouse gas emissions. The U.S. and China must be engaged in the challenges for global climate change. To date, the Kyoto protocols have not had the desired effects. The U.S. has not signed on. While China has signed, the terms have not yet been negotiated and would not begin in any event until 2012. And in fact, as a Canadian, I might note that the Canadian government signed on with much self-praise and recently had to admit that they actually couldn't reach the Kyoto goal. Well, this is clearly an incredible challenge. This China-U.S. Climate Change Forum will take a fresh and hard, but speaking as a physicist, emphasize evidence-based look at climate change from many perspectives: scientific, economic, business, public policy, and even media relations. I most especially welcome our participants from China, and particularly our co-sponsors of the forum, Peking University's recently established College of Environmental Sciences, represented by its founding dean, C.S. Kiang. And you'll be hearing from him later in the program. I was especially pleased to learn of Peking University's participation as a co-sponsor of the forum, as earlier in the year, the president of Peking University, myself, and leaders of 8 other universities around the globe met together in Singapore to form a new alliance called the International Alliance of Research Universities, which is a consortium of 10 universities from across 4 continents. The IARU includes Berkeley and Yale from the United States, Oxford and Cambridge from Great Britain, University of Copenhagen and ETH Zurich from Europe, Beijing University and Tokyo University, National University of Singapore in Asia, and Australia National University. So quite an interesting and powerful set of universities. And one of the goals of this small international consortium is to create meaningful programs for exchange of students. And so one of my fantasies is that we would have a year-long undergraduate program in environmental science where participants from many of these universities would spend, for example, 6 weeks in Berkeley, 6 weeks in Beijing, 6 weeks in Tokyo, maybe 6 weeks in ETH, and you can choose after that and get a world perspective on on the challenges of environmental science and global climate change. And University of Tokyo in particular, along with Beijing, has a new focus on sustainability as one of their major thrusts. I also want to recognize the organizers of the China-U.S. Climate Change Forum, the Berkeley China Initiative, and who are the Berkeley China Initiative and the Graduate School of Journalism. The Berkeley China Initiative, headed by sociologist Thomas Gold, brings together the richness of our campus's research and teaching on China and works to forge new partnerships. The Graduate School of Journalism is, of course, led by Dean Orville Schell, whom you just heard from, a China scholar who has devoted much of his career to reporting and writing on Asia. Today's real-world problems can only be solved by bringing to them attention from many different disciplines. Berkeley is especially well situated to meet such challenges because of the phenomenal breadth and depth of expertise on our campus, and you will get exposed to some of that over the next 2 days. We are home to many of the world's leading climate change experts. Spurred on by what appears to be a growing crisis, the Berkeley China Initiative and the Graduate School of Journalism felt it would be helpful to gather together scientists, policy specialists, business leaders, investors, academics, economists, NGO leaders, and media representatives to consider where each country was in the process of confronting the challenges of global climate change. It's our hope that this forum will provide the opportunity to discuss global climate crisis solutions and to spur new research. We also hope that the forum will be the first of a growing number of Sino-U.S. exchanges on the environmental front as part of an annual collaborative convocation that UC Berkeley will hold with Peking University's College of Environmental Sciences. I should also mention that I'm very proud that we here at Berkeley, thanks to the efforts of our extraordinarily committed students, supported by our faculty and staff, have launched the Cal Climate Action Partnership, known as CalCap. We love acronyms here at Berkeley. CalCap is an initiative which will develop a strategy to reduce significantly greenhouse gas emissions from the UC Berkeley campus. We have a staff and student community on campus that is deeply committed to environmental protection. Let me close these remarks by thanking the many other campus forum sponsors and the many forum supporters who have provided funding to make this conference possible. I'll not name them all, as we are extremely fortunate to have so many, and you will find them listed in the program. Our next speaker is Richard Blum. Dick is a UC Berkeley alumnus and University of California Regent. I know that he's an alumnus because he just commented that it's 50 years since he used to take naps during lectures in this lecture room. And we're very hopeful he's going to be the next chair of the Board of Regents. Dick has a very deep connection and love for China. When Dick's wife, now Senator Dianne Feinstein, was mayor of San Francisco, the city set up one of the first sister city relationships with China between San Francisco and Shanghai. A prominent international businessman, Dick is chair of Blum Capital Partners. As co-founder of Newbridge Capital, of which he's also co-chairman, Dick has been a pioneer investor in private equity in Asia. He's also chairman of CB Richard Ellis, the world's largest commercial real estate services company. As I think many of you know, Dick is deeply committed to investing in local communities to help them develop greater economic self-sufficiency. He's founder and chairman of the American Himalayan Foundation that does projects in the Himalayan region and in Tibet, ranging from schools, health services, forest restoration, and small-scale economic development. He's recently made a $15 million, I repeat, $15 million gift to fund a Center for Developing Economies at UC Berkeley that will bring a multidisciplinary focus to seeking solutions for alleviating global poverty. The center will also actively involve our students in doing work in developing countries, both undergraduate and graduate students. Today, Dick will speak to you about the importance of the university being engaged in the world and specifically in China. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dick.
Well, thank you very much, Chancellor. There's no question that universities here and in China and elsewhere in the world play an important and often a key role in the debate on global warming because it has been way too politicized. But I'd like to quote from something that Vice President Gore, who unfortunately can't be here today, said yesterday from Europe. So the entire global community has a consensus on the question that human beings are responsible for global warming, and the President still has his doubts. Tim Flannery, who wrote The Weathermakers, says, evidence is that we need to reduce CO2 emissions by 70% by the year 2050, and the transmission to a carbon-free society is eminently possible. Back to Kyoto, we need to go back to Kyoto. The only countries, well, technically there are 4 countries that haven't signed it, U.S., Australia, and then Monaco and Liechtenstein, which wouldn't add up to a small suburb in Shanghai. No disrespect. And that we just need to get serious about it, and that all of us here, who particularly live in the U.S. and China, have to care, have to use our distinguished universities, places of science and reason, and take the debate out of politics and get about the changes. And so I am personally delighted that so many people are here, particularly all those of you who have come a long way from China, and I know this day will be very successful in for those of you who are yet to hear Al Gore's, it went from a PowerPoint presentation to now a film. It's very impressive, and I just hope that millions of people see it because it's a message that is clearly overdue. Thank you.
We're really pleased to be able to welcome next as one of the two keynote speakers, one of the world's greatest physicists, Steve Chu, Zhu Diwen, for those of you who are Chinese, was trained here in Berkeley, went on to have a very distinguished career at ATT Bell Labs in Stanford, where he taught. He's now returned back to Berkeley to be the director of the Lawrence Berkeley Lab. He's a Nobel laureate, a member of the National Academy of Sciences, and winner of many other distinguished awards and prizes. And he is now very closely associated at LBL with the Helios project, which is a project that is seeking to develop carbon-neutral fuels. So, Steve, please join us.
Very good. Okay, I am very pleased to be here and to talk about this problem, the energy problem and the climate change. So I just want to briefly run through some of the more recent things we're beginning to learn about climate. The question is there climate change? I think the fact that the Earth is warming up is not really up for debate. These are actual measurements of the temperature, the average temperature of the Earth from 1860 to 2005. It doesn't show 2005, which is up here. 19 of the 20th warmest years have occurred since 1980, and 2005 was probably the warmest year in the last 1,000 years. But this, people can argue, could be a local fluke of just a few hundred years. And so we should go backward in time. And if we go backward in time, what we find, this is now present time, and this is going backward by 420,000 years. Plotted in red, black, and blue are the temperature, the carbon dioxide, and the methane concentrations. And the first thing you'll notice is here we are in a warm period, and these are the ice ages. Just to put a scale on things, maybe 150 years ago, Neanderthal man was roaming the Earth. And it's fair to say, or I'll go out on a limb and say, that Neanderthal man did not cause this increase in temperature. Okay, why are we concerned? Well, here we are today, but the current CO2 level is up here. So, in fact, over the last roughly million years, we're pretty confident that the CO2 has been higher than it has in the last 500,000, probably million years. Is it the highest that it's ever been? No. There were times when it was significantly higher than it is today. There were times in the Earth's record which is significantly higher than it is today. Those are hundreds of millions of years ago when insects were this big and mammals had a rough time. So will life be wiped out if we undergo severe climate change? No, but maybe humans might have a rough time. What is clear is that the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, have increased since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So if you take this increase and put it into the best computer models we have, what you find is the red is the measured temperature increase since 1860, and you put in all the natural variations due to solar variations, volcanoes, which put up soot in the air, and other things. You find that you can't really fit the increase in temperature, whereas if you put in computer models which include the increase in greenhouse gases since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, you find that you get a reasonably good fit. Does this prove that humans caused it? No, but it's very suggestive. And as the computer models get better and better and better, it's becoming more and more suggestive. So with that grain of salt, namely we're not absolutely certain of what's going to happen. Predictions are very hard to make, especially about the future, as Yogi Berra would say. There are predictions of what happens when the carbon dioxide exceeds twice the pre-industrial revolution level. So just to set your scale here, pre-industrial revolution is 275 parts per million carbon dioxide. We're today at 380. Twice 550 is something which I fear we will glide through and actually increase. But let's take twice CO2 levels before the Industrial Revolution. And if you look here in China and the United States, let's say in the United States, in the Midwest, one is predicting about a conservatively 3-degree centigrade rise in temperature. If we go to 4 times the level, the United States will go 6 to 10 degrees. So let me remind you, a 6 to 8 degree change is the difference between the temperature of the world today and the temperature of the coldest of the ice ages. So it's more significant than one might think. It doesn't really mean you just turn up the air conditioner. You also notice that the heating is very uneven. It's mostly over land masses and in the northern hemisphere. Another thing that is becoming clearer and clearer as time goes by is that even if you control CO2 emissions, once you have carbon dioxide up there, it's going to circulate between the air, the ocean, the land, but the time constant is a few hundred years. So even if you get control of this carbon dioxide over, let's say, a 100-year period, the damage you've done over those 100 years, you will live with for several hundred years. So if you want a wait-and-see attitude, let's wait and see for 50 or 100 years, then it will be too late. So the issue here is, now, do you believe these predictions? Well, suppose there's a 50% chance they're true. If someone told you there's a 50% chance that you would die from smoking cigarettes, you would try very hard to stop. But it does not mean that this is a certainty. So the stakes are so high that I think we have to really do something about this. The more recent news is that the globe is warming up faster than we thought. This is a satellite map of the ice sheet in Greenland in 1992 and 2002. And 2005, it's even worse. What is happening is that this ice sheet is melting much more rapidly than predicted, mostly because of the fact that there's soot in the air, it lands on the ice, and the ice is not reflecting as much of the light. Another thing that wasn't really appreciated is when the ice melts, it goes down these rivers down into the interface between the ice and land, and then it's now liquid down there. It lubricates that, and the glaciers are slipping off Greenland much faster than anticipated. Now this is once the ice begins to melt, there's 2 kilometers of ice in Greenland. You're going down in altitude as well, so once it starts to melt, it'll be a long time before you can build it up again. This is a stable situation with lots of ice and high altitude, and once you have no ice, then it's hard to build that up. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the sea level will rise. The sea level is rising much at the upper limit now of what was predicted 4 years ago. There are a lot of people living within a few meters of sea level. Another very serious concern is this is the so-called ocean conveyor belt. This is water from the Atlantic Ocean, for example, and then it cools down and then dips down here, and this enables the Gulf Stream to keep Europe warm. As the water gets fresher, the density of the water decreases, and there's a fear now that this ocean conveyor belt may be disrupted, and if, for example, the Gulf Stream tips south, people over here will be in serious trouble. The people in London live at the same latitude as the people in Calgary, Canada. It goes to minus 30 degrees in Calgary, Canada, and it never freezes in London. So this is another issue of concern. So now the question is, will we run out of fossil fuel? And the answer is not for the next couple of 100 years. We will certainly run out of oil probably within the next 100 years, gas soon thereafter, but there is plenty of fossil fuel in the form of coal, tar sands, shale oil, and others. And so the estimates varied from at least a few hundred years, 200 or 300 years, to 1,000 years. And the current forecast is we will be putting in 3 times as much CO2 in the next 30 years as in the previous 250 years. China, where are these carbon deposits, especially coal? The countries with the largest reservoirs of coal are in this order: the United States, China, India, Russia. It's predicted by the year 2025, this is the amount of CO2 emissions from China, this is the amount of CO2 emissions from the United States. This is roughly 35 or 40% of the entire CO2 emissions in the world. And this color here is India. So it's good that we're here, because China and the United States really have this incredible responsibility, because we will be the largest countries that will be producing CO2 in the coming years. So I think what needs to be done is there has to be a dual strategy. One of conservation, where you maximize energy efficiency and energy use while keeping your economy healthy, and the other part of the strategy is to develop clean sources of energy. So on the demand side of the energy solution, this is a plot of the wealth of countries. This is GDP per person on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the primary energy use per person. So, and these dots are successive years in the United States. We're leading both in wealth and also in the use of energy. There are examples: France, United Kingdom, Japan, Ireland, which are using about a factor 2 less energy than in the United States. And the real question is, what will China and India do? Well, let's first say that European countries want to, as they evolve, they want to increase their GDP, of course, but they want to be down around in this region in terms of energy use. The United States, I believe, can clearly be down by a factor of 2. Whether it can be down by a factor of 3 without major disruption is open for debate. But the idea here is that as, for example, China increases its economic prosperity, please do not follow this example, but follow this curve. And in fact, why not bypass all of the learning of the United States and Australia has had to do and try to end up down here? Now, how do you do that? Well, California has been a reasonable model for how to curb its appetite for energy. After the first oil crisis in the early 70s, California got very serious about looking for ways of conserving energy. In fact, it was in part led by a former high-energy physicist. He was Enrico Fermi's last student, and in this first oil crisis, he left high-energy physics and wanted to devote his time and attention to helping solve the energy problem. And through and then he recruited many, many people, and finally California, in the last 30 years, has been doing wonderfully in terms of its electricity consumption per person. It's essentially flat, while the rest of the United States has gone up by 50%. Now, how did he do this? He looked at various things. For example, this is a plot of the energy consumption of refrigerators from 1947 until the mid-1970s. And so he said, well, there's no reason why refrigerators can't be made more efficient. And first by labeling which ones were efficient, but then by state regulation, followed eventually by federal regulation, the efficiency of refrigerators increased by more than 4-fold. In that same time, the capacity of refrigerators has increased. Now, you might say, does this mean that refrigerators are much more expensive? The answer is no. This green line is the cost of inflation-adjusted cost of refrigerators during that period as well. So you can really have your cake and eat it too. Technology, once you say that regulation is coming, people get very ingenious. Before that regulation was coming, the refrigerator manufacturers fought these standards tooth and nail. But as soon as it was passed, they said, okay, we can do it. So that's something that you should all remember. Now, how much energy is saved by this just refrigerators? Had these standards not been passed, we would have used, and we were at the 1974 efficiency, we would use this much energy. This is the amount of energy saved. How does that compare to, for example, all of hydroelectric generation in the United States? Well, it's comparable. It's less than the amount of electricity generated by all the nuclear plants in the United States, which is 20% of all electricity output. But this doesn't really tell of the real economics, because a lot of electricity is lost in transmission, and it's really end use that matters. So if you think of the end use savings, this will dwarf hydro and is within 20 or 30% of nuclear power, just refrigerators. If you look at how the United States consumes energy, and it's in part, well, let's keep it in the United States. This is the amount of energy consumed in transportation, in residential and commercial buildings, and in industry. Industry means the production of steel, concrete, aluminum, so on. Very energy-intensive industries. And transportation is roughly 1/4. Buildings are roughly 35–40%. It is possible to design buildings, both commercial and residential buildings, that save, oops, I don't know what happened there, save at least a factor of 2. And again, LB&L, I'm proud to say, has led some of the way in this cumulative savings of buildings, both in the development of thin films on windows and in development of so-called electronic ballast in fluorescent lighting that led to the compact fluorescent light bulb. And so there are still many gains to be had. LB&L has recently helped Shanghai design an office building that's literally a factor of 2 more energy efficient than comparable buildings built in the last several years. And it's very simple stuff. It's south-facing windows have shades over them. North-facing windows, there are fewer windows. A little bit better, you make the roof of the building white instead of black. Things like that actually can save factors of 2 or more in energy. In fact, aggressive savings could drop it by 80% or more. California is also, if you looked at the energy savings in California, half of it has come from appliance standards and building standards, but the other half has actually come from something else, and that is decoupling the amount of profit that utility companies make from selling more energy. If you think about it, in the past, utility companies would sell more energy, they would get more profits, and this was good. And finally, California said, no, we should separate that. Then they would have demand-side control of the energy, and you wouldn't have to build another nuclear power plant, another coal plant, another gas-fired plant, and guaranteed utility companies a fair return on investment. And all of a sudden, the utility companies in California are the biggest preachers of energy conservation. So that's something else to keep in mind. So now let's go to the supply side solution to the energy problem. Coal, tar sand, shale oil. There's abundant stuff here. If you look, the world is building more and more coal plants, and in fact, especially in China and the United States, as gas becomes too expensive to use for baseline electricity generation, you have a choice between conventional coal plants like pulverized coal, or ones which gasify the coal and then burn the gas, which is a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and you can actually shift that totally to hydrogen, burn the hydrogen, but now you have CO2 that you've captured. Now the question is it possible to pump that CO2 underground for long-term storage? It is possible to pump the CO2 into used oil wells, in fact used for enhanced oil recovery, but for the big-time storage, excuse me, it's not certain how much CO2 we can store and for how long in the so-called saline waterbeds deep underground. But with that caveat, if you look at the prices, if you design a plant, just a gasified plant where you're not going to capture, well, let's say when you're going to capture the CO2, the range is uncertain, and it could cost anywhere from 5 to 9 cents per kilowatt hour to generate this electricity. In pulverized coal without capture, it's 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. Even with capture, it's going to be a little bit more. And so the question is, what will it take industry to actually go to carbon capture? On the economics of it, if you look at these numbers, there's no way a utility company will ever capture the carbon. Okay, so again, there has to be something that would put a cost on putting the CO2 in the atmosphere to tilt the balance, again, so you encourage innovation both in these plants and in the ability to capture the carbon. If we don't do this in the next 20 or 30 years, there will be many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars invested in coal-burning plants. And once you invest this money, the will not to use this plant will be cast for the next 50 years. So this is something that really has to be done. Invest in the research to assures that carbon sequestration is possible and to try to get the costs down. Fusion, there's not much to say about fusion except it's not going to be a major supplier of energy in this century. At best, in the most aggressive scenarios, maybe 10–20%. So it's by the end of the century. So it's not going to play a major role. Fission, nuclear fission is possible, but there are two real serious problems. One of the long-term storage of the waste, and if you recycle the fuel and burn it so you can get down the waste, then there's a real problem with nuclear proliferation. This is the energy capacity that we use. This is the energy generation in the United States. If you wanted to go all to nuclear, you would have to build 1 gigawatt reactor every week for the next 50 years. And so even the scale of this is something which is a little bit scary. So nuclear, we will have to play some role in it, but how much really depends on the balance between the waste and nuclear proliferation versus carbon capture of coal. Okay, so the rest is actually something of capturing energy from the sun, wind, solar cells, biomass. There's been a spectacular improvement in energy generation from wind. This is the cost of windmills as it's going down. It's now in a good site. It's becoming comparable to the cost of a gas-fired plant. But in order to stimulate the innovation that now produces these huge 1 to 2 megawatt windmills, this is each single windmill can generate 1 to 2 megawatts of electrical power. There had to be a promise of return on investment so that companies like GE and Siemens and utility companies would actually invest in putting these wind farms up, that if the price of energy from other means went down, you could still recoup that investment. And because of this long-term strategy, really pioneered in Europe, it really spurred the technological development. So here again, it's policy that actually then laid the groundwork for the development of the technology. So similar sorts of things one hopes can be done with solar technology. Roughly speaking, we have to get the cost down, or the cost efficiency down, by a factor of 10 before wide-scale deployment. There are new possibilities in new materials, especially in nanotechnology materials, that might allow this, or even getting better and better the old standbys of silicon or 3,5 gallium arsenide type of indium phosphide, things of that nature. But this is still a wild card as to whether we will actually get there in the next 10 or 20 years. Okay, biomass is something I have particular interest in. Nature has discovered a way of capturing sunlight, CO2, water, and some nutrients, and converting it into chemical energy. The conversion of sunlight into transportation fuel is one of the most critical things, because as we begin to run out of oil and as the world clamors for the remaining reserves, there's all sorts of built-in conflicts there. There's 13 billion hectare. A hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters of land. There are 13 billion hectares on Earth, of which 1.5 billion is now used for crops. This 23 or 24% is used for pasture and range, and then the rest is forest, savanna, or non-arable, either desert or mountains. There's been a miracle in agriculture. If you plot from 1950 to 1995, this is the amount of production. There's been a 7.6% increase in the agricultural output per year over this last 45 years, But during that time, you ask how much land was actually put under cultivation, the increase was about 10%. So as the world population grew, and as you actually raised more crops to feed animals, what was happening was the efficiency was actually keeping pace with this. So the world population is now predicted to be something, the peak world population is predicted to be something on the order of 10 billion people. And there's every reason to expect that this efficiency will increase because the developing countries actually don't have the efficiency of countries like the United States, Europe, Canada. So there is potential for increase in agriculture. And so conservatively speaking, if you have 1.5 billion hectares under cultivation, you go to 2 billion, we can feed all the world's population. What does that leave? Well, if you look at the amount of land that can be put under cultivation, non-irrigated cultivation, you find that there's roughly 4 billion hectares, right now 1.5 billion hectares. So say we set aside 2 billion for raising crops to feed people, there's 2 billion left to raise crops for energy. How well can you do? Well, these are some numbers that are in the middle ground. If you talk to some venture capitalists, they say these numbers are way too conservative, you can do better than that. And you talk to others, they say, well, it may be a little bit optimistic. So let's say within a factor of 2, these are the numbers. You can raise grasses like miscanthus that can yield 20 dry tons of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin per acre. You can convert, you can get 100 gallons of ethanol per dry ton. So that means 3,000 gallons per acre. And I've seen estimates as high as 4,500 gallons per acre, as low as 1,500 gallons per acre, but something of that order. You take the land that the United States uses and doesn't use, but pays farmers not to plant. So roughly 100 million acres out of the total of 450 million that the United States can possibly cultivate. And that will produce 300 billion gallons of ethanol per year. How does that compare to the total oil usage in the United States? Well, oil consumption in 2004 was 139 billion gallons of oil, which converts, because of the higher energy volume of oil compared to ethanol, to about 200 billion, that's a billion gallons of ethanol per year. Okay. So the land we now have paid farmers not to plant can actually produce enough oil so we're off of not only U.S. oil, but foreign oil. Now, if this number is overly optimistic by a factor of 2, that's okay. Okay, even a factor of 3. There's enormous potential here. So we can do better than we've done in the past. How? You use the sunlight, CO2, and nutrients. You create biomass. You want to make the plants self-fertilizing, drought-resistant, so if it doesn't rain, the plants won't die. That way you can put a lot of marginal land under use for this purpose. And then you want to convert that biomass into chemical energy. And that would require improved energy conversion, so you don't have to invest as much energy in order to convert the cellulose into chemical energy. This is a picture of a modern plant that was built in 2002, and it's very energy intensive. You use high pressure steam, hot acid to break down the plant material. You then separate out the liquid plant material that can be then hydrolyzed into sugars, and then you take that sugar and you ferment it into ethanol. There, we believe, are huge gains that can be made in making this less energy intensive, and so this is where the biggest gain is. There could be totally new ways of producing liquid fuel, transportation fuel from cellulose. One of the most rapidly developing technologies today in science today is biology, molecular biology. And there's a new form of molecular biology called synthetic biology. What that is that instead of putting into a plant or bacteria a single gene to make a medicine, you can actually put in dozens of genes. And the poster child for this type of work is actually done by Jay Kiesling, who's a professor here in chemical engineering and chemistry at UC Berkeley, and is also the division director of the Physical Biosciences Division of Lawrence Berkeley Lab. And what he has done is he has used this cure for malaria that was found in a plant that grows in Southeast Asia. But it's too rare a compound within the plant to actually make it cost-effective to treat malaria. About 2 or 3 million people a year die from malaria, and it was projected to increase substantially because the protozoa that causes malaria has now become resistant to quinine-based drugs. There was a new drug called artemisinin, which was discovered, and Jay Kiesling has found a way to teach E. coli bacteria to make this drug. This is being handed off to a company called Amaryllis. I talked to the CEO of this company a few days ago, and he believes that there's going to be at least a factor of 10 reduction, that the target used to be 20 cents a cure for malaria. He thinks he can make that pretty easily. And so this is going to be deployed within a year or two. So the issue is, can you use the same technology, putting lots of genes that confer self-fertilization, drought resistance, and all these other things into rapidly growing plants that require not much water? And then can you confer into microorganisms like bacteria the ability to break down the cellulose in a much more efficient way to make liquid fuels? And so this is one of the things that is a goal. So if you consider what are national concerns, and really international concerns, there's national security, which is intimately tied to energy security. As oil gets scarcer and people jockey for position for this oil, this becomes a defining part of the global politics of the world. In order to ensure prosperity in countries, you have to have reasonably costed energy, and of course the environment, the global warming. So the need for sustainable CO2 neutral energy plays centrally in all these things, which are at the center of most national concerns. So as mentioned in the introduction, I'm the director of Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory almost 2 years now, and when I decided to take the job, I said that this laboratory has the intellectual assets not only for energy efficiency but also for new sources of energy. It's a very distinguished laboratory. There are, in its history, 10 Nobel Prize winners and at least one more in the pipeline. Never mind. And 8 of those Nobel Prize winners did their work as employees of the lab. They started their careers as young scientists. Currently, there are 59 employees in the National Academy of Sciences. That's 3% of the entire membership in the National Academy at this lab. And so our scientists have gotten very excited about this so-called Helios project, and that is something that takes sunlight and converts it into useful forms of energy. I talked about developing new plants to make biomass, developing new microbes to break down the biomass into some sort of transportation fuel. Also new photoelectric materials that can generate electricity. And then once you have the electricity, you either use the electricity or convert electricity either directly from the sun or from wind generation using novel electrochemistry into fuels, and so on and so forth. So this is a very exciting program that's being developed in the last year, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. Some of our best and brightest basic scientists are now willing to sign on, shift their careers, and work on this problem. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chu, for that excellent and eye-opening presentation. Good morning and welcome. My name is Tom Gold. I am the Associate Dean of International and Area Studies and Director of the Berkeley China Initiative, one of the sponsors of this forum. The goal of the Berkeley China Initiative is to identify, bring together, and expand the exceptional resources at Cal in order to support the research, training, and communication of all aspects of China, past, present, and future, both on campus and in the larger Bay Area community. We believe that we have the opportunity and responsibility for Cal to be the unquestioned center for the study of all aspects of China and invite you to join us. Information on the Berkeley China Initiative is available on the tables in the lobby. It's my great pleasure now to introduce Professor C.S. Kiang, or in Chinese, Jiang Dean of the College of Environmental Science at Beijing University. It is no exaggeration to state that this conference could never have happened without the enthusiastic support and extensive network of Dean Jiang. When we learned less than 2 months ago that we had to shift the venue of this forum from Beijing to Berkeley, Dean Jiang, who had no prior ties to Cal that I'm aware of, agreeing with the importance of this topic, responded immediately to our request and helped us to assemble an A-list of Chinese scholars and experts in a wide range of fields related to climate change. So on behalf of all of us at Cal, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Dean Jiang. Professor C.S. Jiang received a B.S. in physics from National Taiwan University and a Ph.D. in physics from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He returned to GIT in 1978 from the National Center of Atmospheric Research, where he served as the head of the Atmospheric Aerosol Project. At GIT, Dr. Jiang developed the Atmospheric Sciences program within the School of Geophysical Sciences and served as the director of the school from 1981 to 1988. The school recently has been rated as one of the best and the most influential schools in the United States. Throughout his academic career, Dr. Jiang has played a very active role in assisting China in the development of a modern and sustainable economy. He accompanied the first official Chinese meteorological delegation visiting the U.S. in 1975 and was invited as the foreign expert by the Chinese State Meteorological Administration in 1980. In June of 2000, the China Foreign Expert Bureau invited Dr. Jiang to lead a delegation of 6 U.S. experts to provide comments and suggestions to the Beijing Blue Sky Project. Professor Jiang has served as the founding dean of the newly established College of Environmental Science at Beijing University since June of 2002. His vision to build a Chinese characteristics World Impact College of Environmental Sciences at Beijing University will set up the basic infrastructure for the development of human resources for the next century leadership in sustainable development. Please join me in welcoming Dean C.S. Jiang to give us an address. Dean Jiang.
Excuse me, Carter.
Yes.
Do you want to open this for me? Sorry. Before I hook up the notebook, and I would like to actually I got notes, get the email this morning from our students, and they want to actually they met Kofi Annan and supposedly visit the Peking University at the May 23rd, 9:30. Which is because we try to establish Northeast Center for Sustainable Development, Peace, and Security. So he considered this a very significant impact, and which maybe make some contribution to solve some of the problem in the hot spot. But anyway, and Kofi Annan and our President Xi Jinping recognized my absence. But then in the meantime, they also recognize the importance of this forum. So they want me to give you best regard and for the important topic about the climate changes and between the U.S. and China. So I think I just want to say, and so in some sense, I thought mess up about his visit, but in the meantime, actually I bring the best news come over here, and because they all recognize the effort. They also hope this is the beginning for long-term and the collaboration between U.S. and China. I would like to have this chance to talk a little bit about the role of university, because I think Professor Zhu already summarized the research and also the scientific research, and also clearly and outline the problem of the climate changes. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more. My talk is going to have in 4 parts. The first part is a global environment issue. The second part is environmental issue in China. And then the third part I will talk about is the vision and action of Peking University. And then, oh God, that many. And then, I hope I don't push the wrong button. And I think at the last part, I would like to have this opportunity to outline a few of the possible area of collaboration between our educational institute. And I think, as Chinese say, you threw some of the bricks in order to attract some of the jades. So just bear with me. I just give a few of the examples. So global environmental issue, I try to be punctual on the timetable because I think Professor Chu took 5 minutes from me. I'm generous enough, I give it to you. So I only have 25 minutes now, okay? And the first one, global environmental issue, I think is very clearly outlined. What's the issue of the global changes and climate changes? But I think our global environment problem is much more than just climate changes. So I'm going to talk a little bit plus. What is it? It's very simple. Two things we can see for the last 50 years. In 1950 to 2006, the population increase is more than the 400 million of the population increase from the Peking man and also to update. So which means our population more than doubled and during the 50 years after the Second World War. Then the economic growth is very significant. The GDP of the year of 2000 is greater than the GDP of the entire 19th century. So linear extrapolation simply does not apply to the contemporary world. So we're talking about what is the age? This is the age from geophysical science people and talk about it. This is Anthropocene. And this is the statement quoted by Paul Crutzen. And in 2001 in Brussels, he talked about Anthropocene, that means human beings are changing the earth. He drove about 64 diagrams, and I only took about 12 of them, including the population growth, the GDP, and paper consumption, water use per capita, and also including international tourism, and also in number of the McDonald's. You can see they all exponentially increase, and that's for 50 years. And I just want to remind you, China did it in 25 years, and Shanghai did it in 15 years. So this is global changes. It's not only because our population increase, and it's not only also our nitrogen fixation is already greater than natural process. And also temperature, I don't have to say anymore. And then the species extinction. So the global changes is much broader scale. What that means in the past 50 years, industrial output has increased 40 times, energy consumption has increased 16 times, water usage increased 9 times. I just want to say, this is in Chinese, but I can translate it in English. The word is this: if the paper consumption of Chinese equivalent to the paper consumption of US, we need the 4 Earths of the forest. If Chinese have the automobile as much as United States per capita, we need the 3 Earths just for the lab of the battery. So can we help? We cannot help but worry. 3.8 billion years of the Earth's natural resource will reach depletion by the end of this century if use continues at this current rate. Which I would like to call attention is new paradigm must be established. Which is which? It's the environment or economic. Which one is subsidiary and which one is holding company? We need to really, really question the fundamental question, fundamental ideology, and fundamental value. Then I'm going to address a few words in environmental issues in China. Again, population. Again, economic growth. I already show you. I have a graduate student produce those curves instead of 50 years. And they produce the curve and the population, McDonald's, everything in 25 years is much steeper. And the question is, how long is going to be sustained? Population, economic growth. And then I would like to say the population, I just give you a few examples, and they call the city cluster. And tremendous amount of the city cluster and appear in the east coast of China. And the population over there, like near the Beijing, Tianjin, that's in the northern part, and they call Bohai Bay, and Yangtze Delta, near the Shanghai area, or Pearl River Delta in the south. Each of the cluster, the population is 50 to 100 million. I want to let you know another thing about the GDP. Everybody say the China double digit for the last 20 years. But the GDP, the World Bank announced recently, the air quality and the water quality, just for the cost, economic cost of the air and water and pollution, is equal to 5 to 7% of the GDP. So I think it's very important to recognize that. To build the infrastructure is not only building the highway or telecommunication network. The environmental restoration could be part of the infrastructure. 5 to 7% of the GDP. 460 million of the population is in the urban environment. And this, if it severely and have impact on the quality of life, and also impacts on the socio-economic development for the future. And I try to summarize a little bit, and some of the words in there, and still half of them in Chinese and half them in English. I think you can see the graph, and this is just complexity of the air. And I just want to remind you, in China, in 25 years, and they have the pollutant for the old and pollutant for the new. And in the Western and the society, like in the United States, maybe you try to solve some old and the pollution problem, and then we add some new one, like a fine particle and ozone. But before, we solved some sulfate problem and nitrate problem. But China, the 25 years, they all accumulated together. So I think if you're thinking about it, trying to solve the air pollution problem, simply by adopt the Western knowledge is not sufficient, because it becomes complexity with the old and new. And I just want to give you some of the number and outline, and you can find this out in the UNDP about the impact on the health, the bronchitis and also asthma, and also the children's high blood and the lead level, and also how many impact of the health. All those numbers become very much in the news, in the media after the SARS. And also in the water, and the same thing. I think I even don't need to outline what are the water problems. I think everybody to visit China, and they're going to see what are the problems. And then I also, once again, I would like to emphasize the impact of the health. And I would like to let you know, 6 out of the 27 of the large city, and their drinking water quality does not meet the standard. Their groundwater, about 23 out of 27 of the large city, and does not meet the standard. And also, the World Bank also estimated if the wastewater treatment were increased for the current 20% to 50% coverage, total grain production could increase by 24 million tons by 2020. So I would like to just say the air and the water and those issues can have impact on the health and also an impact on productivity. But more serious things I would like to emphasize on is the interface. If you want to solve the air pollution problem, or you solve the water pollution problem, if you don't think about the whole problem holistically, including the soil, including the water, and by the whole medium coupled together, I think you'll miss the whole boat. The reason because the atmosphere and biosphere interchange in there is very unique. And I would like to say later on and try to tell you some of the paper is going to be published. I think Peking University and in the issue of May have a special issue published by the Frontier in Ecology and Environment this month. And the title of the special issue is China Environment Problem. We outlined all the things. And next year, we're going to have a special issue in the atmosphere environment, and the year after will be in JGR. So by that, you're going to recognize the problem of the environment problem in China. And I would like to say, after we give the background of the global issue, and also the background of the China, and I want to give you the overall picture, and then we say why we need the role of the university, and specifically research university in China. I know, and there are plenty research university. Our neighbor, like Tsinghua University, and many others, Shanghai Jiaotong, which I think former provost is here, and also Fudan, etc., and Xi'an. the many, many outstanding universities. And I would like to say today, the only thing I can say, few words, is about the College of Environment Science, Peking University. The reason I want to say that is certain new approach, a new education goal, new education vision is created not just by me, it's by the consensus of our students and faculty. This Chinese characteristic and world impact didn't come to me. It's come from our students and our faculty. We want to say, you know, you heard about the word, world class, world class. I think our Peking University decided we don't want to use the word class. We only use the word Chinese characteristic, but we would like to have world impact. What is the vision? The vision is 21st century. The Peking University makes some contribution to China. But 21st century, we believe we should set up the stage to make contribution to the world. Because Chinese are part of the world citizen. What is our operational principle? I would like to emphasize on this. I do know, and Dean Frake, he will talk about it, and maybe some other time. I'm glad I share some of the view, and I hope I didn't steal thunder. I really believe you can cover much more detail, more comprehensive. But the environmental issue, we think most important is we cannot deal with it reactively. We must consider it's proactive. That means when we do the planning, we have to think about the environmental resource before we do the overall plan. That's which I don't believe we had that before. So proactive versus reactive. The second thing we have to recognize, our problem, like disciplines are classified by human beings. The nature never recognized them. So we have to know, for all the things we learn, we have to understand the environmental issue or the societal issue, urban planning issue, everything. It's system science, it's system engineering, and require the system management. The third one we say, the human resource development, because it's a system, not one single individual, really know how to cover the whole thing. So we need the human resource development, we need to build up team. It's not only just build individual. So collaborative, competitive must be combined together. We also, in there, I think our students, and we discuss, what is the human resource development? And it's a teamwork, reward system. Those things must be questioned and must be challenged. And then, because we never have an experience like that, we must be innovative. So innovation becomes very important. Peking University is one of the leading institutes. We always thought we are provide the leaders. No, we don't. We only try to develop leadership quality. We are not develop leaders. Because in the future, like the Old Man and Sea, when Hemingway wrote the book, when he dreamed, don't dream about a single line on the hill of the mountain. They dream about the group of the young lions. In the future, it's the team, it's the group, it's the partnership. So leadership quality development, we emphasize on that. We also discuss about it. What is the leadership quality? In the future, because they want to innovate it, they must be tough. We call intellectual toughness we have to develop. Because it's not easy, you have to be persistent. It's not like a genius. You can suddenly define out, solve all the problem. It's not that easy. And our college, we have about the environmental science, environmental engineering. We have ecology, resource, and also urban regional planning. I think that's quite comprehensive to cover all the environment, pretty similar some of the program over here. In addition to that, we have a graduate design school. And I think we have an architect research center, and we are, I think, the director and graduate from Berkeley, and Zhang Yunhe, and now I think he's the department head of MIT, and which we are very proud of it, because it's some kind of brand reverse, and they come to the United States now instead of it, and become the head of the department, and he will be involved in some of the project which I outline. And we have about 1,040 students and 580 graduate students, 460 undergraduate. We have 150 faculty and staff. I'm not going through the detail of the 5-year plan, but I think it's very important we need to establish new evaluation system and also quality management system and also international competitiveness curriculum, international competence teaching, and also from scientific discovery, technology innovation, economic development, and also policy recommendation, policy evaluation. Very important, multidimensional international platform. If we want to make any contribution to the world, we know we need a partner. So international and globalization is very important. So we emphasize on 4I, internationalization, interdisciplinary, and integration, and most important, innovation. That was the vision, but what are the action? The action, I'm going to summarize just few of the program to illustrate the so-called team, so-called interdiscipline, so-called integration. Some of the program I would like to talk about is relevant to this conference, and the regional air quality and the climate changes. The reason because I think maybe you look at it in China and later on, if anybody have any study and their impact, even though it seems like it's regional, but definitely have a global impact. And I will talk about it, some of the project we're taking the action. The second one is integrated water resource management. Even though we say integrated water resource management, it's regional and urban, both sustainable development. So if your program called Sustainable Development City, I think in China, if you want to address the problem, not only the urbanization, you have to address the rural area together. Because in the urban, they only have about 500 million of them. But in the rural area, it's 800 million. How are you going to resolve that population? You have to design region and urban together. Environmental health, I think I would like to tell you, could be more important and more global issue. The SARS, just the tip of the iceberg. Green building, and we are talking about green building because we're going to build a green building. We would like to become prototype of the project for the building construction of the future of China. Tsinghua University, they have one, and Peking University, they will have one. I think because 50% of the new building construction in the 21st century will be in China. If we don't know, take care of the conservation problem, I think we're in trouble. Then another thing we're talking about the conservation leadership, because that is a very important new model of the paradigm, how the human being and nature and biodiversity and animal can live together. Whenever human beings are well developed, we almost have no animal, no diversity left. So how are we going to do that in the future in order to really, really guarantee the harmony between the human being and so the nature? We must have a new paradigm, new model. And I think one of the systems we are established, it's already proposed. I think I know Professor and Feng and talk about it, maybe your project in Chengdu. I just want to say some of our capability, it does not mean those capability cannot transfer to different locations. And this system is we call the Earth System Observatory. We measure everything, ecological system, chemistry, physics, everything has anything to do with the human and also the interaction with the nature we're measuring. And these things, I think, led by Professor Fang, Jin Yun, and Xiaoming. And the location we pick up is some kind of imperial and hunting ground. They call Mulan Weichang. And the location is in the field observatory. You can see that. And over there, and it's about the north 400 kilometers north of Beijing. And you can see there are the path of the dust storm, the observatory, and this is the satellite picture in the year of 2000, which this dust is going all the way and transport in beyond the Pacific Ocean. I think some of them land in the Aspen Institute. I would like to say that location is very good, very significant. The reason because they are in the ranchland, woodland, and also farmland. And I think they say they are the dreamland of the cloud, and they are the source of the water, and the flower, the world of the flower, and the ocean of the forest. And they usually have those 4-character slogan, and I think it sounds pretty good. And you can see those are the ranchland, and those are the farmland, and then they have a 1.4 hectare of the artificial forest. And remind you, in China, by the year of 2050, they would like to have 26% of the land coverage with the forest. But how are you going to manage it? Ecosystem manage it. So we established observatory over there. And then we established the background radiation solar institute and instrumentation and other things. And everything is online, and online instrumentation. So all the measurement, NOx, ozone, and the CO, and including even some of the OH measurement, some radical measurement, organic, everything. One measure, one is in the observatory, another one is urban side. We do have a tremendous international and collaboration. And this summer, we're going to have more than 100 people from Max Planck and from the Jülich and from the Leipzig, from the Tokyo University, from Taiwan, from Hong Kong University Science and Technology, and the Guangzhou University from Science and Technology, and La Jolla, and people, Paul Crutzen and Mario Molino, they all work with us, and Georgia Tech, and also at NOAA Aronomy Lab. Maybe now they changed the different name now. And also European Commission Joint Research Center in ISPRA. They're all our partners. And I do hope that some of the Berkeley people will join us and after this conference. And then the second one I'll talk about is integrated water resource management, Pearl River Delta and Tumen River. And Pearl River Delta is about the 50 million population, and I think GDP is about 21% of the China. The important thing, they are earliest economic development region. And also they have a serious water problem, and they have a serious, you can see the satellite image from Moody, and you can see whenever you have a river, you have air, and all the environmental issues are really much combined together. So we do have a Pearl River Delta regional air quality and impact on climate and also environmental health, led by two of my colleagues. And I just want to show you some of the examples. Who are the people? Peking University, Guangdong University, Chinese Research Academy for Environmental Science, Zhongshan University, Anhui, and Optical Fine Mechanics, and also Jülich, Tokyo, National Institute for Environmental Study, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. And the only reason I want to show you this, I know it's too busy for a read, just try to impress you how many people are coming. Second one, even further, extra, okay? Anyway, but I would like to mention to you about the important issue in health. I do hope maybe next time, maybe we can have some of the issue talk about environmental health, because I think that's a global issue. You can see the China, just takes a few pictures, snapshot. I want to remind you, just want to try to make one or two impressions on you. I did it with our students. Whenever they have a news report about their so-called cancer village, it means there are people have a cancer, high cancer rate. Those village people, they report on the news, and then we try to write it down. It's not government statistics. It's our own survey from the news report. And you can see all those cancer village and location, just purely by journalistic approach, not scientific and no validation, and I just want you to know. All those cancer village, you can take the picture. But I think the importance is this. Those cancer village people, because they don't have a job over there, so many people have a high cancer, so they move around. Some become the migrant worker and in other big cities. That could be the time bomb. I just wanted to say the importance of that issue in China. And I think the SARS, once again, like the bird flu, are tip of the iceberg. And the Peking University, and the College of Environmental Science and Medical University, and also College of Chemistry and Molecular Engineering, and we formulated a joint institute, and I do hope this is just the beginning. And we are also study something like we call anthropogenic impact on evolution. And we have a mobile lab and try to do the spot. Instead of do epidemiology study, we're going to on the spot and to go to the mobile van. Green building, I just want to let you know, we are going to build up 250,000. We have a 2 charrette with all the best architects all come and to join for the discussion. But one of the things I want to say this to you is we have a more than 10-year data about the old Chinese architect. They have an ecological and theory behind that, by the water and all those things. Just like Chinese medicine. They never quantify them, they never make a standard them, so they never industrially process them. And we are doing such a data bank. And we hope some of them, it can be used. We call Chinese characteristic, but the data bank with the modern technology. That's the building we're going to build, and hopefully, and we'll be finished before the 2008 and Olympic. Conservation leadership and how to make the human being and animal live together. And the location is Southwest. If anybody more interested, I can talk to you. And Berkeley, in some of the, next year, we're going to have one Fulbright visiting scholar come over here. So new paradigm, I want to emphasize on, because Professor Chu already talked all those technology. The first industrial revolution, the environmental impact directly proportional to the technology, which is extractive, linear, fossil fuel, abusive, wasteful. And we do hope the new paradigm is our technology put into the denominator, reusable future technology, solar and hydrogen. So in order to implement that, we think it's very important. Instead of an engineering extension service or agriculture extension service, we propose economic, environment, equity, education extension service. It's a balance in harmony. Instead of just emphasize on productivity, we have to learn how to balance. The College of Engineering, because we know in order to do that, and Peking University in 100 years, we established a new College of Engineering. Those are the departments. Two of the departments is joint department between Georgia Tech and PKU. I do hope Berkeley can interact with us. And I think also I want to talk to you a few of the possibility of the cyber infrastructure of the environment prediction, regional, global, and also Tumen River I want to emphasize on is very important because that's hot spot. If we can put all our effort together to solve some of the global problem, I think maybe it's a good demonstration, good quality program can be a model for the future 21st century. And I think this, I will leave it to you and about the list of the shopping list of what area we can collaborate. And the most important is student and faculty exchange. We hope we can have a global classroom, and which we have one example with the MIT Sloan School and Indonesia, NGO, and Peking University, and Cape Town. And I think that was fantastic. With all the 4 different cultural backgrounds, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Confucian, and Buddhism, and the different tribes, and we communicate. I think if we have that kind of a collaboration 50 years ago, we will not have the world like today. Thank you.